Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson, and we are studying the resurrection of Jesus, and we're in John's Gospel today, and we're going to read chapter 20, verses 1 through 10. Now, on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene came early to the tomb while it was still dark, and saw the stone already taken away from the tomb. And so she ran and came to Simon Peter and to the other disciples and to the other disciple whom Jesus loved, and said to them, "They have taken away the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they have laid him." Peter therefore went forth, and the other disciple, and they were going to the tomb, and the two were running together. And the other disciple ran ahead faster than Peter and came to the tomb first, and stooping and looking in, he saw the linen wrappings lying there, but he did not go in. Simon Peter therefore also came, following him, entered the tomb, and he beheld the linen wrappings lying there, and the face cloth which had been on his head, not lying with the linen wrappings, but rolled up in a place by itself. And they entered the tomb, or excuse me, then entered in, therefore, the other disciple also, who had first come to the tomb, and he saw and believed. That's an important verse. For as yet they did not understand the scripture that he must rise again from the dead. So the disciples went away to their own homes. Now, John, in talking about the preparation, tells us about Joseph of Arimathea, as do the Synoptic Gospels, but also that Nicodemus was there, and that Nicodemus was the one um, who paid for and provided the big jar of the perfumed oil, the mixture of myrrh and aloes, about 100 pounds in weight, that they were going to use, and that was there on site, so that they could finish the body, preparing the body of Jesus. Um, so on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene. It doesn't mean that she wasn't with, were not other women with her, but she's the primary witness, and particularly in John's gospel, because John's going to tell us how Mary met Jesus before anybody else did, and we'll talk about that next time. But Mary comes first. Now he reaches back into Mark's gospel here. Mark is the one who's already told us that Peter ran to see. Um, Mark is also the one who told us when they left, they didn't know what to make of anything. That they were just disturbed when they left. And and John's going to explain that, because Mary in verses 11 and following, she's still disturbed, and she hasn't believed that Jesus is risen yet. She hasn't believed it yet. Um, in fact, in John's gospel, the first person to believe is John. So Mary comes, and they tell, and Peter and John. John is the disciple whom Jesus loved. Does that mean John was his favorite? No, but it felt that way to John. And it probably felt that way to them all. Um, um, they were running, both of them, to the tomb. As soon as they heard it, we got to go. And we have Peter being Peter, just, I got to go. And John going too. And John being faster than Peter. I love that detail. And if we're doubting, we have an eyewitness account. We get the details that we don't have anywhere else. That they had that John ran faster, that John got there first, that the stone was rolled away, but you couldn't just look into the tomb. You had to stoop down to see into the tomb, because the opening was not big enough to walk into. You had to stoop down to look into it. And that when you looked in, this is what you could see. You could see that the linen cloth, and he hasn't been wrapped yet. He hasn't, they haven't, but the long piece of cloth that would have been twice as long and more than he was, that would have gone, he laid on top of it, they laid him on top of it, and then they would have brought the top around and laid it, and then the face cloth underneath that. That um, was dealt with. And so when you looked in, the big cloth was folded up neatly, And then when you walked in, you saw that the face cloth wasn't there. It had been rolled up and laid aside. And it just vividly gives you the thought that it was Jesus himself who, when he physically rose, that this body was the same body, but now transformed as a resurrection body, that rose, and before he left the tomb, that he folded up the long cloth and he rolled up the other one and laid them aside neatly. And then he says, and this is important, so listen to verses 8 and 9 together. Enter the tomb, the other disciple entered the tomb, and when he saw, he believed. I believed. In that very moment, John said, I believed. Does that mean that I understood? No, I didn't understand. Did not understand. Verse 9. As yet they did not understand the scripture that he must rise again from the dead. I did not understand, but I did believe. I believed that he had risen. I didn't get it, not yet, but I did believe. And then after that, they go to their own homes. So they don't go directly back from that moment to the upper room where he will appear to them shortly. And in that moment, they go back to their homes. Okay, we're going to talk about Mary Magdalene next time. I love this account. I cannot promise that I will not weep because I will, probably. It's just an amazing fact. You know, John says in First John verses 1 through 3, he says, you know, we experience Jesus with our five senses, and you're experiencing Jesus with the written word. That's okay because you get the full experience of it. And we really get that in the resurrection account of John in so many ways. We're going to see it we're going to see Jesus looking out at us directly, talking about us, me and you, right now, as we continue to read John's gospel. Okay, I've gone longer than I ought. Pick up with verse 11 next time. Thank you so much for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the word.